Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's Mike here at Gamefromscratch. Quick follow-up to yesterday's very scary headline-sounding news, and that is that Unreal Engine is doing some price changes, and that is in 2024, they're going to be moving to a per-seat license. Now, I told you not to panic because for the vast majority of game developers, this means literally nothing because those price changes are not coming in the game development world. They're coming in other areas, such as the example Tim Sweeney gave was the automotive industry, but it's also going to apply to video production, architects, etc. Well, first off, I got to apologize to a pretty good chunk of my community because I didn't realize so many of you were making films or movies using Unreal Engine, so you were definitely impacted from this. So when I said don't panic, I meant don't panic game developers. But if you're in the world of film production or architectural visualization and you're not making a ton of money, yeah, you had right to panic for sure because there's ambiguity here that you were going to start paying money for Unreal Engine where you didn't have to before. So here is their current royalty structure, and it's all going to make sense in just a second. So right now, if you use it to make a game, if you make over $1 million, you owe them 5% of every dollar thereafter. Pretty straightforward structure. They succeed, you succeed, you succeed, they succeed. So that is how Unreal Engine works for game development. So if you make a game that makes no money, you owe Epic Games literally $0. This is not changing, by the way. So this aspect of Unreal Engine isn't changing at all. This aspect very much is. This is for non-game development people. So this is like people that are doing like art visualization, training, film work, etc. Well, right now, Unreal Engine basically makes no money off you unless you fall in this category. So if you need to have premium support, private training, or custom licensing terms, then you're paying $1,500 per seat per user. The problem there is if you don't need any of those things, you can use this thing completely free in those segments. So they're making no money off of the, you could potentially make a film using Unreal Engine, a super successful film, and they make $0 off it if you do not need support. So for example, like if Disney didn't have a custom agreement with them and they did this for making Mandalorian, but they didn't need any of these things, by the way their license is set up, Disney would literally have to pay Epic Games nothing. So this is what they are looking to change. Basically, this tier here, for people that are non-game developers in 2024, there is going to be a per-seat license cost similar to, again, what you would pay for Maya or Max. So I imagine this $1,500 is probably going to be accurate, but that's a pure guess on my half. The problem here is filmmakers, especially if you're like smaller indie or amateur filmmaker, you're getting screwed here. You may have just lost your tool of choice. And that was in the comment section to this video. There were a lot more filmmakers out there than I thought. So I didn't realize that there were a lot of people in my audience that are actually into making films with Unreal Engine. Goes through here. There are actually a lot of people that like this is their job. This is where they use it. And again, VTubers, YouTubers, people using it for, short films and indie film development and so on. There was a ton of feedback here throughout the comments, and to be honest, I didn't realize so many of you were actually making films with Unreal Engine. It actually makes me feel really guilty for when I cover new releases of Unreal Engine, because I normally get to the film stuff and like yada 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 over it, because I thought the vast majority of you were here for game development, but there's a ton of you that are very concerned about what this is going to mean for you making films. So again, that sucks for us indie filmmakers. I can't afford $1,500 a year for my indie filmmaking, and I get it 100%. So when I titled this video Unity price changes, yes but don't panic, I should have actually entitled it Unity price changes, yes but don't panic unless you're a filmmaker. But the good news is I can now title it as Unreal Engine price changes, yes, but don't panic unless you're rich, because that is kind of the new category. So I went straight out and I asked Tim Sweeney. This is the easiest way to clarify things. We got a definite question here from the community, so I took your question and I put it to Tim, and we have an answer, and it is very straightforward. So I asked him, hey Tim, getting a lot of questions about aspiring and indie filmmakers and how they will be impacted by the 2024 changes to the Unreal Engine licensing. I know details aren't set in stone, but will there be minimum revenue thresholds so that these people aren't impacted? So that is the vast majority of the concerns from people in the comments that are using Unreal Engine in a filmmaking capacity. And straight up the response is, won't affect. There will be minimum revenue thresholds for commercial projects, and students/educators will remain free. So if you're using this in an educational environment, you are not impacted. If you are, now again, we don't know exactly what those minimum revenue thresholds were going to be, but if you're in an aspiring place, so for example, Visual Studio, you can get Visual Studio Community as long as your organization makes less than $1 million a year. I wouldn't be surprised that they use a very similar structure here, but I have no idea what the revenue cap that Epic Games are going to set on this is. But the good news is, if you're using this as like a small house, you're not making big money off Unreal Engine yet, you're not going to be bankrupted by the per seat licenses. In fact, you're not going to have to pay them at all. So that is really good news for a lot of people that were concerned here. So again, the straight up question is, will there be minimum revenue thresholds so people aren't affected? And straight out the answer is, you will not be affected. So if you're a small or indie filmmaker, or if you're using this in a developing market and you're really not making, you're using it, say, for ArchViz, but you're only making like a couple $1,000s a year, you're good. You're set. Ditto for if you're working in student or education. By the way, Tim also clarified a couple of other things in that comment thread. They're kind of unrelated, but I'll cover them here as well. There was a question here about UEFN. So there is right now, under 18 creators can't create content to sell in the UEFN economy. So when is that change going to come on it? And it's not coming soon, unfortunately. Rather, there's an ongoing process to figure out where and how we can roll this out country by country where laws allow. I 100% get this one. Roblox has been under a hell of a lot of legal stress due to the whole, child workforce, because they allowed kids to basically make and monetize games. This is a tricky situation, whereas if you start making money off of people that are under 18 or the age of majority in your country, you get into a world of legal problems. So that is being clarified there. They're still working on it, but it is a country by country and a slow-moving process. And the other thing here is, and this came up quite a bit actually in questions too, is how will they find out if I use it for free? Are they going to put DRM in there that dials home or whatever? And this was actually a different question slightly. We will have to provide educator or student email addresses, proof, etc. Some educators aren't attached to educational institutions. This is about, again, the per-seat licensing. And it says straight out, we won't be adding any sort of DRM to limit access to the software, just an interface that makes it easier to pay and manage company-associated accounts. So that's where we are at with this whole situation. I would say on the whole, I expected this. When I asked Tim to clarify it, they don't seem to be trying to get money out of, small people. And it's a funny thing about the world of software development, you want your tool in the hands of students. That's always been the case. Selling student versions has almost never made sense, because going back to, it used to be once upon a time, WordPerfect was the word processor of choice for everyone because everybody used and learned WordPerfect. Well, Microsoft did the sneaky thing of getting Word into all of these institutions, and now everyone's switched over. A lot of the Maya and Max monopoly is because those are what are taught in school. Getting people on your software in an educational environment is super valuable. So again, that it's not going to be impacted to students and educators makes a ton of sense to me. But the fact that there are revenue caps for small filmmakers, I think a lot of you can probably breathe easy. Again, I didn't realize so many of you were working in film production, but hopefully this answer makes you feel a whole lot better about these upcoming changes. Again, I do think, I understand why they had to do what they did. They have an entire segment. You could potentially have multi-million or billion-dollar companies that are using your product to make money, and they're not paying a cent. And that doesn't make any sense. But they've got it set up, or they're going to have it set up, that people aren't going to, smaller people aren't going to get hurt in this transaction. So across the board, I think this all makes sense, but I do appreciate the clarity, and I thought you guys might as well. So that is an update here. There is no impact on smaller people. Now, again, it's going to come down to where that revenue cap is, but I wouldn't be surprised to see it follow something like what Visual Studio does. But stay tuned. When we find out, I will let you know. So let me know what you think. And again, apologies, filmmakers. I underappreciated just how many of you are out there. And the next time I cover an Unreal Engine update, I won't just yada, yada, yada over the film stuff going forward. All right, let me know what you think. Comments down below, and I will talk to you all later. Goodbye.